I thought that the answers to all the questions already exist in science. I was a professor at the university and head of the department. I believed that man is the judge and the measure of everything. I didn't believe in God and thought those people who believed in him were delusional. If there was a God for me, it was me. I decided for myself what was good and what was bad, where the truth was and where it wasn't. I believed only in myself and was a cold-blooded man. This is how art professor Howard Storm describes the first half of his life. Howard Storm had lived a life guided by the belief that all truths lay within the realm of human discovery, that the answers to life's mysteries could be found through logic, research, and reason. He was a man of conviction, deeply embedded in the academic world as a university professor and the head of his department. For Howard, man was the sole judge of right and wrong, the ultimate authority over existence. His faith was in himself and in the structured nature of science. The idea of God and spirituality seemed to him no more than a fantasy, a crutch for those who couldn't bear the weight of life's burdens. In his own words, he was a cold-blooded man, driven by ambition, logic, and pride. This belief system is exactly how Howard describes the first half of his life in hindsight. Born in 1946 in the city of Newton, Howard had displayed a strong affinity for art from a young age. His parents, noticing this early talent, enrolled him in art school to help nurture his passion. He spent years developing his artistic abilities, and eventually he pursued advanced studies in California, earning a master's degree in fine arts. Howard Storm was not just any artist, he was a rising star within the academic community. His talent, coupled with his intellectual pursuits, earned him the position of professor at the University of Northern Kentucky. There, he was tasked with leading a newly formed department in fine arts. His reputation as a skilled professor and gifted artist was well established by the time he reached his late 30s. But despite his professional success, Howard's worldview lacked depth beyond material pursuits. He lived a life ruled by earthly pleasures, intellectual triumphs, and personal ambition. As a firm atheist, he dismissed the possibility of anything beyond death. The grave was the end, he often thought. When the heart stops beating, so does everything else. He believed in the tangible, the explainable, and the measurable, until his life-altering event turned his understanding of existence on its head. The day everything changed. In 1985, at the age of 38, Howard Storm, his wife Beverly, and a group of art students were on a 2-week tour of European cultural sites. As part of the trip, they visited famous landmarks and museums, immersing themselves in the artistic heritage of the continent. One of their stops was Paris, where they spent time visiting the studio of the iconic French artist Eugène Delacroix. After their visit to the studio, they returned to their hotel to rest before traveling to Amsterdam the next day to catch a flight back to the United States. But that evening, an unexpected and excruciating pain interrupted their plans. "I suddenly had a feeling of nausea," Howard later recalled. "I had experienced this before during our trip, but it had always been manageable with stomach pills. However, this time was different." He took 2 pills as usual and continued his conversation with one of his students. But before he could finish his sentence, an overwhelming, sharp pain shot through his stomach as if he had been struck by a bullet. His knees buckled, and he collapsed to the floor in agony. The pain was so intense that he could not hold back his screams. His wife Beverly rushed into the room, horrified by what she saw. Howard, barely able to breathe, demanded that she call for a doctor. "I felt like I was sinking into a sea of agony," he explained. "I couldn't bear it any longer. I screamed at Beverly, demanding she get help." The hotel staff quickly called a doctor, who arrived within 10 minutes. The doctor performed a preliminary check and immediately suspected that Howard had a perforation in his stomach or intestines, likely caused by a severe ulcer. "You need emergency surgery," the doctor said. But there was a problem. It was the weekend, and the only surgeon available was already performing another procedure. Howard would have to wait until the next day. For hours, he lay in agony, his body weakening by the minute. The nurse checked on him periodically, but there was little they could do until the surgeon was available. As night fell, Howard knew he couldn't hold on much longer. He turned to his wife and said, "I'm dying, Beverly. I don't have much time left. What was most terrifying for Howard was not just the physical pain. It was the realization that his life was slipping away, and he believed it would end in nothingness. As an atheist, he was certain that death marked the cessation of all existence. He wasn't just dying. He was being consumed by the fear of eternal oblivion. Death is like turning off a switch, Howard thought. It's the end. There is no soul, no afterlife, no continuation of consciousness. Once you die, you're gone. His final moments before losing consciousness were filled with despair. He hated the idea of dying in a foreign country, away from the comfort of home and family. As his strength gave out, he slipped into unconsciousness. Howard would later describe what happened next in his book My Descent into Death, published 15 years after the event. As he drifted into unconsciousness, he awoke to find himself standing next to his hospital bed. The pain was gone, and he felt surprisingly good. I was surprised that I was dying a few minutes ago, and now suddenly I felt fine, Howard wrote. But something was strange. A man who looked exactly like him lay motionless on the bed. How can I be here and there at the same time? He wondered. The realization that he was experiencing something beyond ordinary life began to sink in. His disbelief in the afterlife had left him unprepared for what was unfolding before him. As he stood in confusion, he heard voices calling his name from the hallway. The voices were gentle, pleasant, and inviting. "Come out," they said. "We've been waiting for you." At first, he hesitated, unsure of who these people were. But their reassuring tone encouraged him to step into the hallway. The corridor appeared blurry, and he couldn't make out the faces of the individuals calling him. Their clothing was dull and gray, but their voices were friendly. "We can help you," they promised. "Come with us, and you'll be fine." Trusting their words, he followed them. But as they moved farther down the corridor, the environment began to change. The once bright hallway dimmed, and an eerie fog enveloped them. He noticed that the voices, once gentle and kind, were becoming impatient and hostile. "Where are we going?" he asked, but his questions were met with anger. "Keep moving," they snapped. "You're wasting time." As they advanced, the fog grew thicker, and the light faded into darkness. He began to feel a deep sense of dread. "I knew I had made a terrible mistake," he later said. "I was being led into a place I didn't want to go." Suddenly, the figures around him turned on him, attacking him with brutal force. They tore at his flesh, mocked him, and reveled in his suffering. He tried to fight back, but he was outnumbered and overwhelmed. The physical pain he experienced was unlike anything he had ever known. In the midst of the torment, a thought emerged in his mind, a thought that didn't seem to come from him. "Pray to God," the voice said. "Why should I pray to God?" Howard thought. "I don't believe in him." But as the pain intensified, he found himself crying out for help. "Jesus, save me!" he screamed. As soon as he uttered those words, a light appeared in the distance, growing brighter with each passing moment. The hostile beings retreated, unable to withstand the light's radiance. Howard felt himself being lifted from the darkness and enveloped in warmth and love. He saw episodes from his life replayed before him, but unlike the accolades and achievements he had once valued, only his interactions with others seemed to matter. He was shown moments where he had been cruel, selfish, and unkind. "We don't see things as they are," Anais Nin once said. "We see them as we are." The weight of those moments hit Howard deeply as he realized how much he had neglected the importance of compassion. He awoke back in his hospital bed, with the excruciating pain of his earthly body returning. He underwent surgery and eventually recovered, but the experience had fundamentally changed him. No longer the cold-blooded, self-centered man he once was, he dedicated his life to understanding spiritual truths. He left his position at the university, attended seminary, and became a Christian minister, devoting his life to serving others and spreading the message of love and redemption. "Death is no more than passing from one room into another," Helen Keller once said, "but there's a difference for me, you know, because in that other room, I shall be able to see." Howard now viewed life, death, and the afterlife not as separate entities, but as interconnected aspects of existence. His journey is proof that life is a precious gift, and how we treat others is central to our spiritual development. His message resonates deeply with those seeking answers about life after death and the importance of living with purpose. "To live in hearts we leave behind is not to die," said Thomas Campbell. Howard now believed that true immortality was achieved through love and kindness. His story echoes the words of Victor Hugo, "For those who love, time is eternal." Howard's life, after his near-death experience, became proof to these truths. Dear friends, if Howard Storm's transformative journey has touched you, remember that it's never too late to change the way you live. This story urges us to reflect on how we can bring more kindness, empathy, and understanding into our lives. As he discovered, it is through our relationships and the love we share that we find true meaning. Please like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more inspiring stories and insights. Thank you for being here, and may you always find light in moments of darkness. Amen.